And the Tory party MP at the centre of a misuse of funds investigation has resigned from the party. Mark Menzies says he will not be standing at the next election. His resignation comes minutes after a report by the Conservative Party itself saying it cannot conclude that there has been a misuse of funds. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Nick Martin. So, Nick, this statement was quite lengthy. It said they couldn't conclude there was a misuse of funds, but that there had been a pattern of behaviour that falls below the standards expected of MPs.
Yes, and certainly the pressure was growing and has been growing quite significantly on Mark Menzies. We had not seen hide nor hair of him since these allegations had emerged, but yet in the last few minutes, Mr Menzies has released his own statement in which he says it has been an enormous privilege representing the people of Fylde since 2010. But due to the pressures on myself and my elderly mother, I have decided to resign from the Conservative Party and will not stand at the forthcoming general election. He says, "This has been a very difficult week for me, and I request that my family's privacy is respected." Now, this all goes back to allegations made by a whistleblower reported in the Times newspaper that one night Mr Menzies made a late-night phone call to one of his former campaign managers, an extraordinary phone call in which he's alleged to have said that he was being detained in a house by what he called were, quotes, bad people, and that he needed thousands of pounds in order to be released. Now, we understand it's alleged that that money was then paid by that campaign manager out of savings, her personal savings, and then reimbursed using local party campaign funds. And it's this use of that money for that rather extraordinary use, which has got Mr Menzies in a lot of trouble. We now know that Lancashire Police are looking at all the information, trying to figure out whether there's anything to answer here. But at the same time, the Conservative Party have released a very lengthy statement. The nub of it is basically that that money was not within the remit of the responsibilities of the Conservative Party, and they've released a statement in which they talk about misuse of funds, they talk about a pattern of behaviour, they talk about consequences, they talk about repetition of behaviour and a potential police investigation. And it's worth just reading a few lines from this. The Conservative Party spokesman said, "The Conservative Party has now completed its investigation into whether there was a misuse of Conservative Party funds. The money in question that was sent to Mark Menzies MP was signed off by the two signatories of Fylde Westminster Group. This body sits outside of the remit of both the Conservative Party and the Fylde Conservative Association. Therefore, we cannot conclude that there has been a misuse of Conservative Party funds." But what they go on to say is, however, we do believe that there's been a pattern of behaviour that falls below the standards expected of MPs and individuals looking after donations. So whilst they say it's nothing really to do with us, they do accept that the actual behaviour involved has fallen below the kind of behaviour we would expect from our MPs. Where does this all leave us? It means that that seat in Fylde is now up for grabs at a general election. It has. Mark Menzies had a voting majority of 16,000. It means a big headache for the Conservative Party, who are behind the polls and can do without another seat being up for grabs. And it's left Mr Menzies saying that he will step down at the next general election and, quote, and cites the pressures on himself and his elderly mother as a result of that decision that he's made.